Edifice of Vicissitudes is the sophomore full-length album from Iniquitous Savagery. This is a Scottish brutal death metal band, and one that is very much in the spirit of late 90s, early 2000s brutal death metal, and that real surge of that sound by way of bands like Deeds of Flesh, and later on Defeated Sanity, Disgorge, and Gorgasm, and whatnot. This is a sound that most people know pretty well. This is not exactly a resurgence of classic brutal death metal in the second and third generations, but it is basically that style without being focused on anything trendy or any of the technical or slamming brutal death metal side of things beyond 2005. So we do get a little bit of that slamming brutal death metal touch to some of it, maybe a little bit more of the early devourment era of that sound, a little bit in here, but nothing that is so rotten or crooked in its movement that you feel like it's just a mosh metal record straight up. So there is a strong technical performance achieved here, but really the appeal of this record is just in the way that it hits and the sound that it resembles. So we'll cut to a clip here and dig into what's generally interesting about this record. It's not that deep. It's just it hits in a way that is just right on. So back in 2015, when this band released Subversions of the Psyche, their debut full-length album, they were deadpan, straight-up brutal death metal. There was nothing with any real flourish to it, and you could accuse them of bringing that mindset back here, but just with more skill in general. And I think that would be comfortable with their intent in general. But there is a little bit more personality. There's kind of a wild vocalist involved here. They brought in some different members, and a lot has changed that enough that this will feel like a leap. It'll feel like a change, and as I describe it, a hyper evolution of the band's sound and style overall. But it's still brutal death metal, and it's still just hitting in that way that you'd want it to. And I wouldn't say that it is so cold and murderous that you're getting like Masticate to Dominate style stuff, and we're not necessarily traveling back to the MySpace era of just horrifying production and whatnot. So in that sense, this is kind of a throwback for me, who I like really found death metal legs in brutal death metal later on, kind of a second wind beyond the 90s. And the excitement of that style and as it was emerging is still exciting now to hear bands nail it in this way without messing with trends and a lot of the kind of boring, wanky garbage that came afterwards. So there's enough of an organic chaos achieved in this music that it still feels heavy and rotten and kind of wild in its performances, that there are human beings performing it. And I really appreciated that about it. It was easy to relate to, get into, and it wasn't too demanding of my time or even my attention. It's just if I wanted brutal death metal in 2024, this is one of the first bands I would point to, besides the obvious greats who kind of come back more recently. For me, that's a high recommendation. This is a very easy record to recommend. It sounds great. These guys know what they're doing, and they're basically nailing it throughout this entire record. There's no real missteps. There's no crazy or boring bullshit on here. It's just a great brutal death metal band hitting it. So that released on November 22nd. Check it out yourself and read my review for somewhat more in-depth thoughts.